make Picard fight, and he announces that he is binding his sword to Picard's cause. Anybody who has a problem with Picard has a problem with Elnor. And then, we see one of the Romulans pull out a disruptor, and he's like, I can still shoot you with this, you sister boy, which was very, it felt very hillbilly redneck to me, watch out there, sister boy, like, I'll just, me and my mother wife will just get you later, it was a little weird, but.
Mother wife?
Sorry. That's really gross, I'm sorry. That's really just not that sister wife is any better, but.
What?
Me and my cousin /wife.
Holy shit!
I offended everybody in the South who listens to this. I apologize. Everybody.
Listen, I can do that because I live in the South. Okay.
I'm sorry. Just as this guy's about to shoot Elnor with a disruptor. Raffi's like, oh, the window's open. Should we beam you up? And Picard's like, yeah, you should beam us up.
Get me out of here!
So they beam, of course, Picard and Elnor up at the last second. They're back on the ship, and Picard basically, he completely tells Elnor, that guy, you shouldn't have killed him. You shouldn't have done that. He didn't deserve to die. And, he's like, from now on, I'm calling the shots of when you're going to fight and when you should hold back. And
I love angry Jean-Luc Picard.
Don't you love him? He's great.
I love it when he gets so angry that you can see him barely able to get the words out because he's just so pissed off. It's gorgeous.
It's great because he's really just, that he's shaking with rage, and in Picard's mind, it's like, he didn't have to die. Like, that guy didn't have to die. We could have just, maybe you could have kicked him once or twice and that would have been okay, and then he would have stopped. I do think it's interesting here, before Picard does get beamed up, is he really does like this sort of very public mea culpa with all the Romulans here, and he's like, it's my fault. I didn't do enough. I promised to help you, and now this is just, you're all in pain, and you've lost so much, and you're angry at me, and I understand. I get it, and I'm sorry. And I think this is maybe one of those moments where Picard really finally begins to truly understand, stop focusing on just himself, like, stop focusing on, like, oh, me, and really focus on how everybody else was affected by his lack of doing enough.
And this is another instance where he's a speech maker, as he was referred to in a previous episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the thing is, he's so good at it.
He is. I mean, he's really good.
He's so good at making speeches.
Absolutely. He's very good at it. But, so, back on the ship again, he tells Elnor, I'll tell you when to fight and when to not. And he's kind of introduces Elnor to everybody on the ship. And this is finally when, it gets revealed what the criteria is for worthiness to bind your sword to a cause, and the criteria is that it's a lost cause. That's the only reason why a Kalankai would bind their sword to a cause, if it's a lost cause, which is very noble and very sort of King Arthur-ish to me. But and poor Dr. Girardi is like, what? What do you mean a lost cause?
I do appreciate this show for straight out calling tropes and just doing them. Like they say, oh, like, bind your sword to my quest.
Yeah.
And like, that's such a tropey thing to say, but nobody says it.
Right.
And it's just refreshing to actually be like, okay, we're just going to say what's happening. This is a thing. I really, really like that.
So maybe since some people have money involved, they'll laugh all the way to the back. I'm sorry. Just a joke.
But like that's the funny thing about Star Trek is that here we are in the 24th century, and there's still people haven't changed that much. This whole idea of bind your sword to my quest, that's something that we even hear in the year 2020. That's an old reference to even us, but 400 years in the future, 500 years in the future, people are still saying it, and they still understand what it means. And it sort of speaks to that whole obsession that Star Trek has with, like, even though we're so far in the future, we still maintain our connection to the past. Like, people still own hardcover books. People are still using...
In great condition.
Yes, amazing condition. It's not just reading it on a pad, or they have an actual book that they turn the pages, or... you know, we've even seen people writing stuff down where they still are preserving that idea of putting pen to paper. So it's sort of one of the things that Star Trek has always done, of like, no matter how far in the future we go, we'll always maintain our connection to these things. Which
I think that's something that was established really in the original series movies, especially with Wrath of Khan, like with Kirk's birthday.
Oh yeah,
and it's.
Bones gives him a pair of glasses. He gets the
reading glasses. Yeah. And, like, he's always reading classics.
Yes.
I mean, the idea that classics like Moby Dick and Shakespeare are going to exist for another 400 years and continue to be read is such a powerful thing. And it's a reason to keep those in our consciousness, because they do speak to the human condition and what it means to explore your own mind and explore the infinite worlds around us.
Well, there's an episode of Doctor Who that has Agatha Christie in it, and the Doctor pulls out a book that was published in 5 billion or some ridiculous time frame. So you know, they kind of were going with that too, because it was an actual book too, and there's one called Silence in the Library, which is, and there it was a library full of actual books, and they were specially printed for the library. Anyway, I'm at this Doctor Who con. I'm thinking about Doctor Who.
Yeah,
that's totally not a problem.
In case you guys didn't know, I love Doctor Who.
So now we get a scene of the Romulan Lannister siblings. So.
Oh my God!
If you anybody watch Game of Thrones, you understand that. But basically, these are siblings who have a very.
I don't watch Game of Thrones, and I understand that.
I think it's in the
honestly,
I don't watch Game of Thrones.
The only scenes I've seen of Game of Thrones are the ones with Pedro Pascal in them. But that's.
I mean, I read all the books, so I always call it Song of Ice and Fire.
Right. Yeah, you're a book reader, not a TV watcher on the Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I'm the resident book asshole.
Yeah.
Nerd.
What a nerd you
Yeah,
are.
I wrote down weird Romulan incest.
Yeah, very strange. I don't know what the deal is with these two, but...
Well, my cousin was like, maybe it's just a Romulan thing. And I'm like, but she's really creepy. She's just like she wakes him up, like...
And that's the thing, is we don't know enough about the Romulans to say yes or no.
Because they're so secretive, because they don't want you to know.
And we just haven't had a show that fleshed them out until now.
Yeah, I it's so true. Like, who could say for sure if it's a Romulan thing or not? Like, who knows?
Yeah.
But anyway, so he's asleep, and his sister shows up. She's, like, crawling around in bed with him, and she's like, did you think I was your robot girlfriend? And it's like, what are you doing? And she... Like,
tracing his veins with her fingertips.
Weird. It's so gross.
Love did that voice, but that's pretty much the voice she used.
I mean, she's using her best sexy voice, and she's like, is she anatomically correct? And I'm like, wow. Wow.
I was honestly, I was waiting for her to ask me, was it as good as when it's me or something? You know what I mean?
Just,
I can see it coming.
Oh, yeah. Well, It's like every episode we get a scene of these two toward the end where she vaguely sexually threatens him and says, if you don't have results soon, I'm going to show up and I'm going to take over. So, I mean, this is like, it's every episode. They have...
now she's there.
Well, she's there now, and she's got her ears back, which she had...
Apparently her internal organs.
Yes. It's just, I don't even know what, but anyway, she basically says to him, if you don't get results, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, I'm going to take over, and you know what that means. And he's now asking her about the Romulan ship that was assimilated, which is what Soji wanted to know about. So he's asking her questions, and she's like, why are you asking me questions about this stuff? Maybe she's the one who's pulling the strings on you, bro. Like, maybe she's here to keep you in line. Maybe she's here to manipulate you. And then she does this thing where, like, she, like, chokes him and then says, who is she? Remind yourself who she is. And he says she's the Seb Cheneb. And, I
honestly didn't expect that's what she was going to say whenever she, like, grabbed him either.
Yeah, I know.
I'm like, first they've got, like, all this cursing, and then now, like, it's turning into, like, a softcore porn. What's happening?
Yeah. The dynamic between these two is very odd, and I'm sure it's written specifically that way. Like, I don't know if this is meant to be like an incestuous relationship.
It has to be written that way. Like, don't even say think. It has to be, because this is not like a directorial choice, because it's been I mean, granted, there's only been 2 but you know what I mean? It's been a through line.
I agree.
Yeah, this isn't like a Jonathan Frakes special.
No, he would not
probably. No, it's not.
This isn't the Riker maneuver here we're dealing with.
Not the Riker maneuver. For sure, not the Riker maneuver. So, our final scene of the show here, Captain Rios' ship, they're engaged in like a firefight with the Romulan bird of prey. The totally cool looking Romulan bird of prey from the original series. That ship is so gorgeous.
Yeah, I wrote awesome dogfight and space Spanish.
Yes, space Spanish. Okay, so this new hologram is called Emmett.
He has a name, and he has like long hair and everything.
He's like, screw it, I don't care.
Honestly, this is when, because I was like, oh yeah, Santiago Cabrera's really awesome, like he's really great, and then like his Rios versions was like speaking the Spanish, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right, I like this. So then I got a weird side.
Well, I also his sexiness level went up quite a few notches with the Spanish. I'm not gonna lie, it did.
It did. Oh, because like he's a good-looking guy, but I wasn't like into him necessarily. And then he was speaking Spanish, and I'm like, yes.
Yeah, I know. I had the same moment.
Okay. I did think of you when he started speaking Spanish, honestly.
Space Spanish.
I did too.
Yeah.
Spanish.
It was very funny because I was trying to figure out, like, what kind of Spanish they were speaking, like, if I could guess what country they were from. Because at first I thought it was, like, Spain Spanish, because they were speaking it very fast. And then he called him Way, which is a very Mexican word. So I think they're speaking Spanish that's more common in Mexico.
In California.
Interesting.
Yes. So anybody who's much more... although the actor himself is from Venezuela, so which is a totally different accent, a totally different thing. But, like, if anybody knows better than me, which I'm sure there's plenty that do, please gently correct me by email or Twitter is fine. But the fact that he was calling the other guy Way, which is a pretty common word that's thrown around in Mexico in Spanish, seems...
In my high school soccer team.
That was my guess. Oh, okay. So, yeah, you live in California, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Emmett, the drunk Spanish-speaking hologram with all the tattoos, is like, "You fly